Now that we've gone through the rundown, we made our picks. Let's go back to breaking down some games that we think are really interesting to talk about. And the first one is going to be the Ravens versus Browns. A lot of people in Baltimore obviously care about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Cleveland do, and they also hate the team in Baltimore for a lot of different reasons, as people know. We talked about last week that people still felt salty in Baltimore about the Colts up and leaving in the middle of the night. Browns fans feel similar, even though it was different circumstances of the Ravens coming.
And it was entirely different. Look, I'm going to put this to bed. The Browns knew that the team was getting sold. They were forewarned that this was happening. Nobody was shocked.
Well, not that they weren't. It wasn't going to get sold, but they were going to move. It wasn't picked up in the middle of the night. They had an idea that this was a possibility, right?
And Art Modell made it very clear what he was doing.
And they came to Baltimore. And I think what people in Cleveland just are more bitter about, we talked about, is they felt that, especially that 2000 Super Bowl run the Ravens had, that was the team that should have been theirs. In Baltimore, they're happy it's not. They're happy it's in Baltimore. But, hey, this is a division rivalry game. And honestly, for Browns fans, you should be very happy about where your team's at, even after losing Nick Chubb. The fact that this defense is legit. This defense is lethal on that side of the ball.
The Brown, this is going to be a defensive matchup for sure. The stat that I had, a couple stats that I had pulled up about the Ravens rankings from Pro Football Focus. The offense is ranked 13th. A little bit disappointing, but we've talked about this. There's been some injuries. Lamar Jackson is still trying to get his, chemistry with the team and a new coordinator. Todd Monken's even made mention of I feels like he's admitted to being a little bit too conservative and too cautious with some of his play calling. But, again, injuries are injuries, and it's going to continue to be a struggle for them. Here's what I'll say to this. The defense is ranked 4th, and I believe the Browns are ranked 3rd in defense, according to Pro Football Focus. Special teams 16th overall. The Ravens are ranked 4th by PFF. So it's going to be a defensive slugfest, in my opinion, going up there in Cleveland. And Deshaun Watson also still looking pretty sloppy. I don't think that there's going to be much offense on either side of the ball, unless somehow Gus Edwards is. And that was another positive. Gus Edwards was fully participant in practice this week, so no worries there as far as the concussion's concerned. Maybe it's a ground and pound type of game. I don't know how much they're going to air this out, but man, pass rushing on both sides of the ball, it's going to be pretty impressive. I do have one clip that I want you to react to, Ryan. It's from Roquan Smith, causing a stir with Cleveland fans. And I think perhaps it's been taken out of context, but I want you to be the judge on this.
Back to playing kind of the villain role, on the road. It seems like that's something that you relish. I know when Terrell Suggs was here, you always talk about it, like being the bad guy in road stadiums. Is that villain role something that you kind of embrace when you go in these road atmospheres?
I definitely, think about that. But at the end of the day, you're considered the bad guy because you're going into essentially another man's house and you're trying to take over, like his wife, kids, everyone there to watch them. So we going over to beat their tails in front of their wife and kids. So when you think about it from that perspective, like any man's going to, fight to the death from that point. I know if that's me in that case, I know I would. So I think about it from that standpoint, and I'm just going in, just like I prepare for any other game. Play to the whistle, play physical, and hit anything that moves.
Any problems with that?
No.
I don't think so either. Like the Cleveland Browns fans were going bananas on that.
So was it on the context of bringing in wife and kids? Is that where it specifically? And again, I understand anytime you make a comment like that, it starts to get a little bit more sensitive. But what Roquan Smith was just trying to say is, and he's trying to bring back that old AFC North mindset rivalry. He doesn't care who he plays. And he kind of brought that at the end of the season against the Bengals.
Yeah.
You're seeing that. He doesn't care. He wants to go out there, be a warrior and fight. And to be honest, he's already preparing for that.
Yep.
That's his mindset. I don't think it's anything malicious towards it, but I can definitely understand, not that I agree, but I understand why fans, just because of the wording, but it's nothing to me.
I don't think so either. I think it's a big nothing burger. And some of the fans, I think, were making tweets and taking cuts from this comment and making it sound as if he's going to come in and basically wreck your home, which, hey, if that's how you want to take it, that's how you're going to take it.
Well, and this is the thing too, we talk about defensive battle. I wanted to keep going with that trend here, and want to give credit more to the Cleveland Browns. I got some more stats for all of you to hear. The Browns are number 1 in the NFL in points allowed per game at 10.7. That ranks first. Opponents' yards allowed per game, they're also first at 163.7. Opponents' points per play, you want to guess where they are? Number 1.
Yeah.
At points per play allowed. Opponents' yards per play, also number 1. Now, this is one that's, can be different because that means that this team has to go for it and take more chances. Opponents' fourth down conversion rate is at 50%. That just means circumstances not going to care. It's very early.
Yeah.
Opponent touchdowns allowed per game, because the number is so low at 10.7. They've allowed 1 touchdown a game. That's number 1 in the NFL. So you're hearing a lot of these points that this Browns defense is for real. And I think that's the bigger part of this. And to round out then, well, where does that stand for the Ravens in this context? The Browns are number 1 in scoring defense at 10.7. The Ravens rank 8th. They've given up 18.3 points per game. So quite frankly, not a lot of offense there. You mentioned Myles Garrett. You mentioned the other players on there. This defensive line is tough. It's been hard to throw on the Cleveland Browns as well. So the Ravens are definitely going to have to run the ball more to get pressure off. But Deshaun Watson, I will say this. Last week, losing Nick Chubb, how would he respond to not having that same running game? And the Titans have a strong rush defense. He went out there and played a solid game, gave his team a great chance to win.
Positives for the Ravens. Gus Edwards, as I had mentioned, will be back, supposed to suit up. Ronnie Stanley also was a full participant, so some more support there on the offensive line. Also, Tyler Linderbaum back. Marcus Williams, I think, was the biggest shock. I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be out for the season. So, and then obviously the most recent signing of Kyle Van Noy putting on the practice squad, but he was also fully participating in practice. It'll be interesting to see when they turn him loose as well. But a lot of things to be excited about. I mean, obviously there's, the other side of this: Odell Beckham Jr., Rashad Bateman, Odafe Ojabo. None of these guys seem like they can stay healthy for some reason. It is interesting to see about Geno Stone. I don't think he's going to be back this week. Ribs are really tough to come back from.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if we even saw him next week, but really big loss there. However, some big players coming back. In particular, I think that offensive line is going to look much better than it did over the last 2 weeks, considering a lot of these guys were out week 1. So I'm really excited to kind of see how that shapes up, how they can stand up to this Cleveland defense. I do think that it is entirely possible the Ravens can steal this one away from the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the other part of this too, we're not expecting all these guys to come back this week. The practicing doesn't necessarily mean they're going to play. Now, Gus Edwards being a concussion protocol situation, if he's cleared and it looks like he is, he's going to play, right?
They need running backs. So.
Right, and they need running backs back, and you need your bruiser. Now, Ronnie Stanley, Linderbaum, to be determined. Great to see them back out. Marcus Williams, again, is the surprise.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not expecting all these guys to play, but we've talked about the team being injured. This just gives you a little bit of hope. It just changes your perspective a little bit, right? When you just see a guy with his name out there and you go, whoo,
yeah,
that feels good. And injuries in sports suck. There's some guys, it's unfortunate that they've maybe been prone to more injuries. Others have just the worst luck in the world.
Yeah.
But whatever the reason may be, you have to deal with it. The Ravens are dealing with it, and no one's going to feel sorry for you. The Browns don't care.
No.
The Browns just lost their all-stud running back, and no one's really feeling sorry for Cleveland. They're going to have to find a way to continue to battle through. And I'll tell you what, Cleveland is going to have a chance at this division because of the fact of how strong their defense is playing. And the only thing that could hold them back is if Deshaun Watson doesn't continue to take a step, which, to be honest, last game, he was magnificent. When I was looking up his numbers, he had a passer rating of 123. He had 81% completion percentage, 289 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's extremely good football from him.
Does sound like old Deshaun Watson.
But again, that's for them to take the jump. And for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, we've talked about it.
Yep.
Not his best game offensively last week from a passing perspective, but the Ravens are also going to have to deal with some of their pass catcher injuries with Rashad Bateman's hamstring and Odell Beckham Jr. still trying to fight back.
Yeah. I was just about to get into the wide receiver room. Being down Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Bateman kind of takes away the ability to free up some of these guys, right? Zay Flowers was kind of like the only guy, wide receiver wise, that seemed to get open. Of course, you still have Nelson Aguilar there as well, but not to take away from Nelson, but I would argue that you probably would be more concerned if you're a defense going up against Odell, Rashad, and Nelson and Zay Flowers, because how do you cover all of them at the same time? So, bringing these guys back is going to be super important, I think, to the success of their offense moving forward. But we'll see. We'll see how they shape up and look against this really, really good defense, the Browns.
Yeah. And again, not expecting a ton of passing yards, by the way. And Lamar was still efficient overall, had a 71% completion percentage against the Colts, 22 of 31. But if you watch the game, just some things were just a tad off, maybe some missed calls. But the thing also, that the element, Odell Beckham Jr., even though he wasn't catching some balls, he was drawing some pass interferences.
That's my point. Yeah.
And that does matter. That does open up the field and set up, and it also creates mismatches, again, to your point. So for the Ravens, they're going to need more of that. And when you take those elements away, it's going to allow the Browns to then team up or focus more on some of these other guys, specifically Mark Andrews. And the Browns, Mark Andrews killed the Browns for so many years. But then the last game, or one of the games in Baltimore last year, the Browns just said, we're not going to let Mark Andrews beat us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be a similar formula, because if Mark Andrews gets loose again, the Ravens are probably going to win this game, in my opinion, because that's just how dominant he's been, and that's such a game changer. But if they can contain him and force these other Ravens players that could be down in their wide receiver room, it's going to make for more of a challenge.
I mean, that's kind of what we saw last week. Mark Andrews wasn't really a big factor in either one of the games. I mean, he scored a touchdown against the Bengals, but really we haven't seen much from him up to this point. And I know he was coming back from injury and that sort of thing, so maybe he's not fully healthy, or maybe he's working on it. But yeah, to your point, if they shut him down, it's going to be a challenging day. If somehow he ends up creating space, then the Browns could end up having a bad day.